play actually. While technology is available, I don't think the industry has used it effectively in nature. RPD is a beautiful, strong solution that's available in the marketplace. Okay? Return path data through the set-top boxes. Return path data through the mobile devices. Return path data through your broadband connected television sets actually. The world is changing. The audiences are changing. Okay? As penetration of set-top boxes has happened since 2018, when the government finally rolled out fully 100% the set-top box regime, 100% of the homes in the country are connected actually, except for a few homes in Chennai probably. Now, is there a way to exploit that? In the last 6 years, we have had experience using return path data on Tata Sky set-top boxes actually. Okay? It is incredible. The difference between BARC and return path data is not the fact that the trends are different actually, but it gives you granular data. Data at a microscopic level actually. Because you have around 100,000 set-top boxes only in Manipur itself actually. Okay. So with that kind of a scale, you can dissect consumption data on television even more effectively in nature. Somebody like say Sanjeev, for example, who owns cable network actually, or Jaggi, for example, in Odisha. Okay. Why not move on to the path of creating set-top boxes that enable you to provide data itself? So you're not then going back again and again to one single body and saying the fact that why is the data not representative of my area? Why is the fact that I'm not able to create usefulness that can give ROI for my business? Okay. Enough of it. You've already spoken about it 100 times actually. There's no response to that. Move on with your life because it's your business at the end of the day actually. And if you cannot rectify your business, then ultimately there's nobody else who can show you the path actually. Okay. There are organizations in this country who uses technology, work with platform owners and create data that brings efficacy and efficiency for organizations to work and get ROI in it actually. Seek out to them, reach out to them, talk to them and see how solutions can be created itself. That's what I could say as my point of view on this particular question.
Anil? Industry. Companies and activities involved in the process of producing goods for sale, especially in a factory or special zone. It's not my definition, it's Cambridge University definition. So whether you are producing news for sale as an industry to make profit is my first question. As media owners, are we there to make profit, to make money? Is the first question. Or where do you put a profit in a threshold? So I know this much of money from the news sector. Okay. Or will I stop losses here and I'll shut my news house or the media house here? Is the first question. See, in my language, Malayalam in Kerala, I have my news network where I don't play for gallery. Okay. I make profit from regional clients, not from national clients. I do have BARC rating, where as per the BARC rating, I'm number 2. As to the perception, I should be number 1. But obviously, the meters are there. Okay, I understood the limitations. No, you cannot be increased in a larger country like India. You don't have that much of resources to increase the meters. But I solve my problem with my retail clients. I mean, Shankar knows well. I've seen on networks almost every day. I cannot carry that. But somebody is asking for a cheaper rate, I won't entertain it. So why should we worry about too much of these things? There are more than 3.25 lakhs of brands in India. So it's a question about how we find out the prosperity clients or agencies regionally.
Thanks, LB. LB, you're also a master in ADEX. Have you ever seen the growth of regional brands, because of problems like what he's saying.
Between 2000 category, including the hyperlocal advertisers. From there, today it's bifurcated between digital, Facebook, YouTube, and regional television. Okay. So therefore, you have a bigger competitor already over there, okay, in digital, sitting there, picking away all these regional advertisers who have come into print. It's great that there's a growth of 176% over 3 years, but that is getting bifurcated across two different platforms.
How much of that would be on television? Close to 35-40%?
So on television, it's around 60%. So television is not doing bad, but what is happening is the fact that digital is taking a bigger digital platform. Okay. Television is just about that, close to around 3.5 lakhs to 4 lakhs actually. Okay. So what is happening is from a zero level, digital has caught up with television completely.
Hello. I really feel that because running a regional news channel has a lot of cost involved in it rather than a national channel. Regional channel has to bear a lot of the other costs, has a lot of huge staff. They have to hire, I would say, don't be considered in the regional news market.
Sorry, Angad, my point was not on.
No, I'm not
CPR,
saying,
generally.
but I'm generally saying it on Shankarji's point, markets and all that. And considering Punjab doesn't even get the corporate clients, Punjab regional channel.
I'm avoiding my first question because Jaggi had asked it in the last session on panel, so I don't want to repeat the same. And we've had enough gyan on panel and all that. So my next question, I think Kaur wants to take it. See, we are actually in a market today, we have this multi-device fragmented video consuming and all of that. Keeping those things in mind, are we outdated, or we as an industry, are we keeping up to pace with the change? And the second point, I guess we have each one of us can take about 4 or 5 minutes.
Pace with the changes in the industry happening in? Obviously no, right? Purely because of the fact that audiences have moved on actually. Linear television is no longer the benchmark, and OTT platforms have come into play, streaming has come into play in a big way. For example, we get data from around 3 lakh linear content. And where is that 50% going to, the time spent going to? Actually, it's going into the OTT segment actually, or to the streaming segment. Okay? The overall consumption of television or content, not television, content in the home has jumped up by 30% actually. Okay? So video as a platform has terrific future actually, super future. Okay? News within that is an extensively high future actually. Short form of video. Okay? But where is it going to? From linear to streaming. And in streaming, short form video is taking shape in a big way actually. So what is happening is two phenomena are happening. One, the idiot box, which we used to call the television as an idiot box actually, is now a smart box or intelligent box because it's doing everything for you actually. And second, we always call television as a family television actually, right? Family device. It's becoming more personal device actually. When I say personal device, in the prime time, the audience who is watching it, which used to be around 3.5 to 4 members per home, is actually reduced to around 2 to 2.5 members actually. The rest 2 members are in front of television set, but not watching television. It's on other devices actually. So therefore, if one were to look at the future actually of television as a platform, question mark. But television as an evolved video platform, great actually. Because there are going to be other devices that are going to compete with television as a screen. Now if I come down to the metric level, that's where things are changing. Okay? You need to move beyond what you're now calling it as a CPRP actually. Okay? Or what is just as a rating. That's a base actually. Okay? Build on top of it. Okay? We have been working on certain amount of data coming up from a metric called attention. I don't know whether I can project one or two slides on the screen actually for everybody to have a look at it. Yeah. So this is an attention device actually. Okay? Now what it does is, if you go to the next slide, the problem today that you're facing in hand, if you roll into the next slide. Yeah. The problem that you face today is the fact that the device that is there, which is giving you ratings with respect to, at the best, what is getting watched in the home. Okay. And then it requires an additional equipment to know who is watching it actually. Okay. But yet you don't know whether the attention is on the screen or not actually. This is what Barun called it actually, sometime back in the panel, called impact ratings for news actually. Can you actually get impact ratings for news? Okay. If you go to the next slide, when we experimented within 2 markets in India, there were 2 content which actually had a high impact score, okay, which means that more attention being given to the content on the screen, which was, or probably even music content or movie content actually had on the screen. So this is exactly what I think Barun was indicating towards Park, to say the fact that can you upgrade from a basic level, vanilla level rating number to a impact level rating number. Okay, that allows for news to gauge the fact that if I'm getting better attention, even at a low rating level actually, that means the fact that the audience is more engaged than just actually giving you reach or OTS numbers actually. So this equipment is actually installed along with the television meter. Okay, or we do it in the RPD box actually, the return part data box. And we collect information on not just television viewing through the RPD box or the set-top box, but we pick up information related to where the eyeball is attended to. So that's why when I said the fact that television screen has moved from a family to a personal level, it's because this data indicates the fact that there are 4.5 people who were watching television earlier is now only 2.5 people watching attention on television. The rest 2 are watching other devices in nature. So your metric itself is now moving from reach and frequency to actually attention. And from attention, because you're also on devices along with it, you can actually track e-purchases too actually. So click-throughs and e-purchases can be the next area that can be tracked too.
Yeah. So I'm not in disagreement with LV after 22 years. The point that I wanted to make here is this entire debate about CPRP, about 50,000 people meters, we need to go beyond that. It's 22 years in the same debate. If you look at, I'm throwing in very ballpark numbers, the catch is on consumption of content, which according to me as well, the data that's come here is exponentially shot up. In our terms, it's more than 30%, it's almost 50%. So what is changing is the medium of consumption. Right? So from cable you're moving to OTT or you're moving internet, but as far as content is concerned, it is only growing. Now the point I'm trying to make, which should be of interest to most of the media owners here, Karthik, Barun, the fact is that the effective rates today are mostly getting determined by representing 161 million cable and satellite homes. Whereas almost 50% of the viewership now is coming out of digital homes, out of OTT, out of browser consumptions, out of your own apps, or out of your content on YouTube, which is not represented. There are broadcasters already using the data for their internal purposes and for selling purposes, which is the incremental data. So if you're operating at an effective rate of $2,000, you should actually be getting 3,000 rupees because of the additional reach coming out. To you as well. To you, Narayanan. So,
Noted.
yeah, so the point is that the content is actually grown, the medium of how it's grown is changed. If you look at broadly global numbers now, and if you look at the digital market, which is almost hitting about $500 billion, and India going by the population numbers, so we are looking at almost 1.4 billion out of 8 billion people, that's 20%. So 20% of $500 billion, you are looking at $100 billion revenue out of the industry. Usme se discount another 20% because we are poor, we are developing, all of that. So look at about some $80 billion, and half of that comes to, even if you take 50% of that of television, that's $40 billion. Against the existing number of, I think, some $10 billion. So I think there's a huge potential. The mistake that we are doing is, you know, we are battling amongst ourselves, trying to prove that I'm better than you or you are better than me, whereas the reality lies that the entire methodology itself is belittling the numbers. And the true numbers are much, much higher, is what I would say. So I really think that your overall top line should be definitely at least 50% of what they are, higher than what, 50% higher than what they are, going by both global numbers and the incremental reach, which is not being reported right now.
Shankarji, I feel some member channels would also like to speak.
Quickly.
No, some from the audience as well.
Hi Shankar. This is especially for LV. In the age of digital consumption where algorithms and data and analytics are slicing and dicing the data far more effectively for the advertisers and in multiple ways, how relevant does these television rating mechanisms stay, including yours? Because, you know, you are really trying very hard to actually deduce it to a conclusion with your methodology. In that case, everything is deduced per se, per click, per visit, and so on and so forth. So what is the future? I mean, you know, we already have these solutions like what he's saying. It's already there. So why do we need to replicate it at all?
It's not replication actually, you're adding. Okay. I think I was mentioning in the first question, I was mentioning about this case of last discussion that happened on Manipur actually. Okay. That BARC may not have enough sample representation in Manipur to represent the audiences over there. But we know the fact that 100% of Manipur homes are digitally connected either from a set-top box or through the mobile devices actually. Okay. We work with a couple of platform owners on set-top boxes. I'm talking about, when I talked about this data, I'm talking about 300,000 homes actually, data coming in from where segregation is happening to understand what is the behavior patterns are given out. So when you have around 100,000 homes of Manipur getting completely taken away by return path data, which is 1/10 of the cost of investment of even 10,000 people meters in that particular market actually, why not use it actually? Okay. It just requires a middleware in those boxes to upgrade that. At the end of the day, news is all about local, regional, hyper-local in nature. And if you want those advertisers to come into play and not be on any other genres actually, the data from these kind of devices can actually give you much more interesting thought than actually having a cost of implementing a panel with high sophistication new boxes put into play.
But you would agree that it's limited to the television screen only and it's driving the data?
No, it goes beyond that. It goes beyond that actually. So what happens is when we do cross-screen measurement actually, for example, the first cross-screen on audio, we are working on it to release it next year actually, early next year, which will give you indication between radio stations listened on FM with streaming stations being listened on mobile actually, together in nature. Okay. So what it gives you therefore is an amplification of consumption pattern between two devices, and it can go beyond two devices as more devices enter. For example, connected TV. Okay. So the minute the connected TV coming in and smart boxes goes off actually, set-top boxes goes off, it's picking up data from the connected TV and adjoining it with the mobile content and checking out what exactly is the behavior pattern.
So pardon my ignorance, I need to ask another one because so all we are talking about is how to measure linearity of content. Ultimately, it all boils down to what is the viewership when content is streamed in a linear manner.
No.
And that is the focus, right? Is that what you're saying?
No. What is getting viewed by the customer, whether linear or non-linear, it's a video consumption actually. It removes linearity and non-linearity out of the box completely. It's just video consumption whether it's going to be on YouTube, the consumption is, or whether it's through the cable operator or the DTH or the connected TV part of it actually.
So all across platforms, it will report it as and when. So it's not
Exactly.
at a particular point in time, it's an ongoing process.
Exactly, exactly.
कार्तिक इसमें
I
दो
think
चीज और हैं.
we've-
Just two more things from our limited experience.
Pankaj,
Any-
quickly in
just a
120
quick one.
seconds.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anything which comes to a panel, right, has its own limitations. The moment you open it and democratize it and it runs into millions, the data is much more accurate. If you look at any form of measurement basis iOS, it's all blocked. And if you look at anything on Android, Google is monopolistic. So you'll crack some kind of a technology, in 3 months it's gone. The only thing that is working now across almost 1 million respondents, the incremental reach that I spoke of, is mostly a hybrid model. Hybrid model mane, you can gauge the platform on a mobile phone in terms of which application is running on the front or on a smart TV. And to understand the content, what was watched, either linear or recorded, that is mostly survey based. And the chances of someone lying are low. So once you extrapolate that to 1 million, that should answer and gives you a hybrid model of consumption across all platforms, linear, recorded, and with a sample which is huge. And it can run into millions and millions, like the RD model, the Reader Digest model, where you have people just enrolling and just, pressing a button every day, and you have like 10 million participants. So that could be a much more robust model.
Great. So I think we will wind up this with Sashi. 120 seconds.
Yeah, so as consumption is going hybrid, I think measurement needs to go hybrid as well. So you will see increasingly, use of sensors, AI algorithms to come up with new metrics. For example, just like attention, why not measure trust, right? When news breaks, which is your most trusted source that you tune into? How do you measure that? Also with new technologies like 5G broadcasting, your broadcast stream itself could become measurable, just like internet streaming, right? So all these are new possibilities. So definitely the future of measurement will see much more hybrid methods using sensors, AI, and new technologies like 5G broadcast.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for a great session. Over to you, Niranjan.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Shankar. Thank you, Shankar, for that. Thank you, Mr. Shashi Vempati. Thank you, Mr. L.V. Krishnan. Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you, Mr. Narayan. And thank you, Angad. Ladies and gentlemen, up next is a panel lined up to discuss the future of TV and digital media. Technology has enabled the merger of linear and non-linear platforms, and convergence is the order of the day. But will it lead to monopolies originated by deep pocket players, domestic and globally? While that is a matter of worry, it's heartening to note that digital play has given rise to new age media entrepreneurship and innovation. New formats are on the anvil and storytelling has got a new lease of life. Is the way forward for converged entities or standalone digital products. Now many of us know that it's not just TV, but we rely on a digital future as well. Here's a short audiovisual and then we have a keynote address.
Over 700 million internet users, the advent of 5G technology. The technological foundation of Indian news is evolving. A churn like never before is on. Digital cannot be divorced from broadcast anymore. We are at the precipice of a tri-junction of impeccable journalism, world-class packaging and next-in-class technology. Now on the NBF Future Conclave, gear up for an unmissable discussion on the future of news, the TV plus digital future.
And to set the context for this panel, may I invite on stage Mr. Vikram Sahai, who is the Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, also an IRS officer of the 1992 cadre. Mr. Vikram Sahai, if I can request you to give us a short keynote address, sir, from the podium, sir. Stage is yours, Mr. Sahai.
Good afternoon, everybody, and let me thank the NBF for having invited me and to share my thoughts on the future of news, TV and digital for this very distinguished audience. I'm very happy that the NBF has organized this national conclave, and especially having called the channels of the vernacular languages, because vernacular languages hold a very, very important space. in this very diverse linguistic population that we have. And I think with the wide viewership they have, they are no less important than the news channels, English news channels, in fact more they are. Well, it's been a pity that over the last 2 years, we have not been able to have such large gatherings and meet in such large scale because of the widespread pandemic. And even though the problem is far from over, I think it's been a real magic and marvel how we have been able to overcome it with the grit and determination of the government and the foresightedness. And I think the great work which our frontline workers, doctors, paramedics all have done, the scientists and pharmaceuticals, and the vaccination drive which has been almost unparalleled internationally. And here I would say the role of the media was very, very important. It was not far back when the United Nations had said that this is like an infodemic, the type of fake news which is spreading around pandemic. And while the government took very good swift steps for that, I think the media played a very, very important role in trying to ensure that the news which is going on to the people about a disease which was very less known, very less heard of, was the correct, factually correct and balanced. And while the ministry did, I remember I would talk to people at the night, tell them this is the decision, please convey to the people, and that is how the media played a very, very important role. And kudos to all of you who are here for having been so responsible during real difficult times which this country faced. Well, I must say in both crisis times and good times, the television and print are here to stay and stay for long. While there is a discernible shift towards digital media, and all of us are aware of that because of the powered by technology, but to a very large extent, the good news that is coming on traditional TV platforms, on newsprint, the same thing is going on the digital version. So the chunk of good news, the chunk of the balanced news, whether it's on digital also, it is coming from the traditional media platforms. And therefore, even though there is a mushrooming of the standalone digital news outlets on the intermediary platforms like YouTube, etc., I think the responsibility and the credibility of the traditional news platforms stands intact, and in times to come, their responsibility would grow even further. Today I read in the newspapers, there was a report by the CSDS, the Center for Studies on Developing Societies. They had done a survey, and they said that maximum news consumption of people in this country is from the television news channels. And they also said that Doordarshan was most trustworthy. So we felt happy about it. That is not to take away anything from the private news channels. The issue of these mushrooming of news outlets, digital news platforms, and whether it is causing any threat to the traditional news platforms. The last few years we also saw a lot of journalists who are working in these news platforms, in the traditional news platforms, fanning out and starting their own news portals. And I think if somebody with years of experience of good journalism, if he goes into a digital platform, he will be as good as he was on a traditional news platform. A good journalist is a good journalist irrespective of the platform on which he is. So I think the challenge is to continue with the good content irrespective of the platform where you are. Well, we in the ministry have always tried to do this balancing act between what we have, the constitutional rights of freedom of speech and expression, and the type of reasonable restrictions in the form of self-discipline, which we always talk about self-discipline, through various code of ethics, whether it is on print or television or digital. And this balancing act has led to a situation where we developed this three-tier regulatory mechanism. And I must compliment the NBF. NBF was among the first to reach out to the Government of India, to the ministry, and say, yes, we want to register ourselves both for the three-tier mechanism of television and the three-tier mechanism of digital media. And that reaching out by NBF said two things. Number one, not only to the government but to the citizens of the country, that we believe in law, we uphold the law, we respect the law, and we value the citizens' views. That is the message which NBF gave, and we are thankful to them for having done that. Well, a few things which we have done, I won't really spend too much time on that. The fact check unit which has been there in the Press Information Bureau. One new thing which we have brought, and I think I must talk about it, is there is a research unit which we have developed. Research unit which is manned by young professionals. They are people who have degrees in journalism, they have experience of journalism, and they have hand out together as a team, and we are trying to develop some authentic documents on various aspects of how government functions on various sectors, socio-economic, health sectors, and these documents are then placed for the media to take advantage of. And I must say that a large number of stories which media is carrying is fanning out of these documents which this PIB research unit is doing. About 400 more documents have been prepared, so I will urge upon you, all of you, just go through that PIB website, see these documents. These documents could be quite useful in preparing authentic and balanced information and reaching out to the people of this country. Well, we all know that for you, for any industry, commercial considerations are important. You're there for business. But while it is possible to say that, well, that can be the only consideration as far as certain entities are concerned, you stand out as a different profession. Because what you are producing and what people are consuming has externalities. It is not enough to say that we have a news, but that whatever you are speaking over TV debates, over news, whatever you are telling about to the people, that shapes minds, that influences people, that shapes career. So there is a large externality, and therefore the very, very important aspect of responsible journalism, I think I don't have to talk about it, all of you are quite aware of it. And all I can say is that we had to take some very decisive steps. It was a matter of real shame. Over the last few months, you might have heard or you might have read in the newspapers and television channels. It was a matter of shame, and we were constrained to block a few news channels. That was something which we had to do as a drastic step to ensure that news which is palpably anti-national, fake and frivolous needs to be blocked, needs to be curbed. And more shameful was an observation that these channels had large viewership. So in a way, the good content was being driven out by bad content. That is the real challenge. How do we ensure that the good content gets a good viewership, a large viewership? And there's a behavioral change which is required. Why should people watch bad content over good content? Why should people watch fake content over genuine content? So there is a behavioral change pattern required, but at the same time, as long as the good content is there, TV will continue and TV will prosper. Thank you so much once again for having invited me. Thank you.
We request you, Mr. Sai, to please take your seat on the stage. You're part, of course, of the next special panel discussion. We are going to be looking now at the future of news, the TV and digital future. Yes, everyone is talking about the digital medium. Is that really the future of news? We will be talking more about that in the next panel, Krishna.
That's right, and for that fascinating panel, let me call upon the people who are going to be on stage, apart from Mr. Vikram Sahai. I'm going to invite Mr. Manoj Gairola of News Nation to please come on stage. Ms. Litisha Panda, Business Development Officer of OTV, to please come on stage. And we are also inviting Mr. Uday Reddy, the founder and CEO of UPTV, which is one of the world's largest internet-based TV service and on-demand service provider for South Asian content, offering content in 14 languages. That's UPTV and Uday Reddy. And I'm also inviting Mr. Rajat Wahi, Senior Director Partner Management Consulting at Deloitte. He has over 25 years of experience in CPG and consulting and has worked with global firms at senior management positions. Wonderful having him over here. Now the floor is all yours, leaving it up to the moderators of this session, Mr. Manoj Gairola and Ms. Litisha Panda, to take it from here on. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah, good morning to all of you and welcome to this session
of NBF Conclave. Our topic is TV plus digital future. It is going to be a very interesting session, as all of us know that TV is declining in its present form. It is losing subscribers, and digital news consumption is increasing. When I say digital news consumption, it means news consumption through mobile phones, computers, and connected TV. It can be through OTT, it can be through apps, Google, Facebook, or any other social media platform. For TV broadcasters, the biggest challenge is how to generate revenue in digital space. For a media company, there are generally two sources of revenue. One is through subscription and one is through ad. Everyone loves subscription revenue. But it is very difficult to ask your subscribers to pay for news, especially in this space. CNN learned it the hard way. The company launched CNN Plus, a live streaming app. It invested close to $300 million. And this app was closed down. It was shut within a month of its launch. And in India also, I think 1 or 2 media companies have launched similar kind of app. And these apps are not doing well. Then another comes ad revenue. The biggest problem in digital space is that for ad revenue, we have to depend on big tech firms. It is mainly Google, Facebook, or other platforms. Because it is these big tech firms who carry our content to our subscribers. And we have to continuously struggle with their, with their policies, algorithm, etc. And generally they collect, in many cases they collect revenue from client and share with media companies. That is why there is always tussle between media companies and these big tech firms. So these are the challenges for TV broadcasters. And I would like to start with Mr. Wahi. So Mr. Wahi, what do you think is the way forward for TV broadcasters?
So thank you anyway for having me on this interesting panel. So I think your points you made are very, very valid. Clearly we are moving to a digital age, a lot of digital advertising. I was reading some data in terms of the growth that the digital media has seen. Depending upon what report you read, between whether it's today if you look at the total advertising revenue, digital is accounting for between 33 to 45%, growing between 20 and 30% again depending upon the reports you need. So it is clearly here to stay, and I think that my sense is that as the as the consumers take on media and they absorb their consumption through mobile phones. Mobile phone usage is going up in India. It's 4.5 or almost 5 hours a day today that consumers are spending on their mobile phones. So I think all of these trends mean that the advertising, that the news media also needs to adapt in terms of about the content, right? Because the digital is here to stay. It's not going to decrease. It's only going to increase. Today it's 45%. Maybe it'll become 50%. But it's, in my view, it's not to say that it is at some point going to completely take over from the TV to advertising, because it's like I give the example of retail in India. Today there's a lot of noise about e-commerce becoming a large player, but after everything we look at it, almost 95% of Indian retail is still brick and mortar retail, and e-commerce only accounts for 5% of total. Even in developed markets today, in markets like the US, e-commerce accounts for only 25% of total retail. 75% is still brick and mortar retail. So I think similarly, there is going to be there is a current tussle. But at the end of the day, it's going to be about content. It's about how you reach your consumers. How do you make it easily accessible to them? Whether it's short news, relevant news, integrity, honesty, all of that stuff. So I think it's about going to be how do you adapt your content based on the way they will consume, and you know that 5G is going to transform that even more, faster, quicker. So from that perspective, I think I think that's the way I see it.
Yeah, but the basic question. But the basic question is how to make money. So Uday, can you enlighten us on this thing?
Hello. So before answering, I would like to give a perspective on technology itself. So the technology when started, it was a broadcast, one to many, right? That's where cable and satellite has come. And today TV is also is digital actually. And if you see today, I will look at Amazon, I think post Diwali you may be seeing 50 million smart TVs. So it's all digital. So what is going to be different is the digital gives accurate metrics for advertisers. You know, every 10 second your heartbeat comes, who is watching, what content is watched. So it's unlike BARC or TRP. I mean the digital side for advertisers, there's a lot of accurate metrics available for the monetization purposes. And you have seen what mobile has done to landline in India and what mobile data has done, disruption. And if you go back, I come from telecom background and then went to media, but what Symbian OS and Nokia used to have 70% market share. So I see that going forward there will be a lot of disruption in the news industry. It's going to be digital, it's going to be hyper-local. So I come from Telangana, it's a Karimnagar district, Huzurabad. So the younger generation, the millennials, are watching extremely hyper-local news. They don't care about what's happening. The amount of time they spend on hyper-local is high. So today what technology brings is the cloud playouts for the news channels, gives the ability for the broadcasters to go hyper-local. See, today any national news broadcasters can immediately launch a district level news channel. So that is the future, and that also will give advertisers accurate metrics for them to monetize. I think that's the future. And if you see 500 million smartphones with more than coming to around 50 million TV households, it's already people are watching digital, and I think that's my view. And we are already seeing in the US, the CPMs, for example, in a connected TVs are $20 CPM. So that will happen in India also, I think.
That is the question I wanted to ask you. What is your take, Litisha, on it?
I would like to continue, as rightly you pointed that, yes, as a consumer, I only know streaming services, digital platforms, right? But as a second generation media entrepreneur, I'm worried. Because when you say advertising, I can't survive on only digital advertising revenue, not in India, not at the moment. And in fact, as a regional advertiser, I definitely cannot survive on digital advertising revenue. So, especially I think this conversation I was having just before our discussion, that it's become like a caste system. English is at the top of the CPM rate, then there is Hindi, then there comes other regional languages. In fact, this is for everybody's information, Odia just got monetized on the big tech platforms. So imagine we being a 25-year-old company, being first and a pioneer in every stage, in digital, in television, everything, and yet still struggling for the CPM rate because you're either being treated as second-class citizens or I don't know. So how to bridge that gap in digital advertising? Because technically in India, I don't think anybody can survive on only digital advertising revenue. So I would like to know how do we survive is, my question would be that, to learn from you.
I think that's the today's view. So we have seen how connected TV advertising in the US, now it's like $25, $30. And the fast networks have come, free ad supported television. So I think once the advertisers get to have a good number in terms of the reach, and you're able to give the exact metrics in terms of the location, the age group, which device. I think that kind of, that's going to be the future. Right now you're seeing today's point of view, but that's what happened in the US few years back. Connected TV, there is no fast networks, but now it's US is doing great, UK is doing great, Europe is going, I think India will just follow. I think it's a question of time.
But what about outlets, the different news distribution outlets, right, who take the charge of giving advertisement to us? There is no transparency in that. There is no transparency in terms of if we are giving you our content to display on your platforms, where is my revenue? Where is my share of revenue? And how do I know whose ad, which ad you're playing on my content? So that you can give me royalty at least, for the least. And advertising revenue share is as it goes. But it's just so unclear at the moment that even if we have to make this change, there needs to be hope. I'm sure that, of course, there is hope by looking at different countries. But at the moment, we're moving at a lightning speed. And at this lightning speed, don't you think there has to be some regulation in terms of revenues and monetization, especially advertisement generation when, happens on my content on different platforms? So where is that transparency and how can we get that transparency being a tech platform and, sir, from the government's perspective?
Yeah, actually this question should be pointed to Vikram Thai ji. Actually, yeah, you see that there is a tussle between media firms and these big tech firms. And in many countries, governments have intervened and they made policy. So what is the status in our country? I mean, we are in the process of making a policy. So when it is going to happen and what is the, I mean?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think I like this young blood speaking so well, so frankly. I think that's the angst of the generation. I mean, they would not like any type of discrimination. I mean, whatever might have happened in the past, but it is an egalitarian society and everybody has a right to have its voice. On this issue, we all know that Australia had this thing, that Australia prepared a law because the tech giants were not agreeing to the bargaining arrangement which was being offered by their competition commission, and then the parliament issued a law and then that is being done. Here also, as I understand, and I think all of you would be aware, the matter is before the Competition Commission of India. So but let us await that. Today there was some article. Yesterday there was a decision of the Competition Commission related to Google, but that was on a different thing altogether. That was on anti-monopoly. But there is already a matter where I think some of the broadcasters federations have already gone there. And let's await the type of investigation and the results which come from Competition Commission. But yes, it is definitely an alarming factor where if the content is mine and you piggy ride on my content, but give me pittance, it worries. But let us see how it shapes up, but we are quite concerned about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so Mr. Wahi, what do you think? I mean, what is the experience in other countries like USA and Europe?
So I think most countries are struggling with this. France is also, I mean, in addition to Australia, has also now forcing the tech platforms to share a larger chunk of the revenues, building more transparency on that. I think it's a bit of a chicken and egg, because what's also happening is that we are going to see stringent privacy laws coming. So while a lot of tracking will happen in terms of who you are, what you're watching, but the privacy laws will also create more firewalls, which will also make it more difficult to do targeted marketing, etc. down the line. Because a year ago we were talking about a much bigger spread in terms of being able to access every consumer, who they are, what they buy. But a lot of the privacy laws will stop that. But I think the key conversation today is that more and more there has to be a transparency in terms of being, what is being spent on any platform, any media. And the same is happening on news today. We get so many WhatsApp groups which are circulating news on various platforms directly to us. Everybody is watching that. Nobody is getting paid for it down the line. So some level of regulatory mechanism, and again, it's always a very tricky, it's a very slippery slope. How much do you want to regulate this? Because social media today is what's going to drive it. If I look at social commerce, expected to reach $25 trillion in the next 5 years. Today it's only roughly about $4.5–5 trillion globally. So this is going to become more and more Insta, WhatsApp, advertising, spread of news, etc. on these platforms. And I think we need to be able to, and I think most governments are maybe 2 or 3 steps behind, because tech is definitely ahead of the curve. So how do you catch up? How do you learn from other countries like France, Australia, quickly bring in some of these regulations to enable better sharing of revenues, not to control what's being spent, but to enable better sharing of revenues is the way I think the whole world is moving ahead.
So Uday, do you think that subscribers will be willing to pay for news? Because for entertainment, generally subscribers pay, whether it is Netflix, Amazon Prime, etc. But in the case of news, what is your opinion? Or what should be the news content that subscribers are willing to pay?
So I think it depends on the content. Like the way TV9 is started, the premiumness of the content depends on that, the subscription. But there's a lot of opportunity to monetize. As I said, every 10 seconds you can take the heartbeat of every single client, what is being watched, you can integrate EPG. So there's a lot of potential on the advertising supported news as well. And connected TV is going to go really big. That is a big CPM rates going to come because they really correlate satellite cable as TV, and when connected TVs really take off, there's a good opportunity on the monetization. But there's a lot of resistance today for a news on a subscription unless it's a really premium in nature. But like, let's say for example, I'm based out of Atlanta, and you know, when Aaj Tak or TV9 comes or Republic, I have to see the news ads from here. So there is a technology now available to put SCT markers on the news channels itself. So on the server side, the ads can be replaced, and that can generate a significant CP advertising revenue. And that's even in the youngsters today, millennial, you know, they're all on mobile, short form, and the technology with cloud playout enables to have a hyper-local channels without any cost. So that will enable the monetization, and also since being capex opex being low, it can be a great business model. Yeah.
And
with that, I have one question. Sorry. My another question would be, what about the piracy that happens? I mean, outside India. Inside India, okay, we're able to regulate it. We're able to put the piracy agencies, etc. But what happens outside India, like the NRIs and the NROs? So
We are the main, we are going through this. Actually, I met Minister also recently. It's really, really pathetic right now. Almost 90% of the international market is pirated. And we are the most affected because we are the only platform out there. Yes. People are downlinking channels, different parts, and they're uplinking. They would take content from all the OTT and they curate it and they're selling as a back boxes. So we have done a lot of extensive work. They've identified 5 main players. We're going after them, but it's a really, really big challenge. And I've been trying to convince all the broadcasters to go at least ad supported instead of getting or a low cost, to get to reach the diaspora audience.
So I have one question for you. So recently I had one of the tech giants, I don't want to name them, when I had a conversation with them and I said, hey, my numbers are not, growing, it's just stuck at a certain level, in fact it's receding. So they said, oh, our algorithm has changed and we are now ranking only non-news content, not the news content. Do you think that controlling the narrative of what the people want so that they'll only show them what is non-news and news is sort of being controlled?
Not really. I mean, that cannot be the
Will
objective.
we allow that?
I mean, we need to very closely look at what you're saying. We'll have a separate discussion on that. But definitely it cannot be a situation where a certain narrative or a certain type of content is only being allowed to be shown at the exclusion of others. And I don't think there's anything more important than good news content. Entertainment can be there, entertainment can wait, but a good news content cannot. So definitely we'll look at that particular thing, but yeah.
I have one question for you, sir. Sorry, I've taken the thing. Sorry. So with initially earlier, the news coverage, every certain specific audience had every specific news channel had a specific audience to deepen the news coverage, and the news coverage was thought through, right? Right now it's become so inexpensive, it's become very casual. Now everybody has the social media as a, they don't even look to media channels to go and say, hey, we need information. So what are the kind of tools and what are the kind of technology that we can equip our journalists and the media industry with so that we can survive that bit?
So I think today, whether you are tracking your news journalist performance, whether what your, I mean, there are large platforms available today. Again, these are large tech platforms today who can work with you, create the analytics, create the infrastructure to say what should be, how should they be able to track the performance, how should they be able to improve their effectivity, how can they also learn and get direct feed from other platforms. So enough is available today. I think in my view today, you can't do it alone. You have to partner with large tech platforms and bring them on board and say, okay, like a Google Cloud, AWS, bring them on board with you and say, okay, this is an ecosystem we want to create. We want to be able to connect with our journalists better. We want to be able to give them real time data and also enable and improve their performance. So I think it can be done. Lots of tools are available, and we can obviously discuss it and share some thoughts with you on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
That's
think
all
we
from
had
me.
a very interesting and informative session. And thank you very much for attending this session. Thank you.
Thank you all for that very enlightening session. And as we move further, joining us next is Rajya Sabha MP from Punjab, Mr. Raghav Chadha. As we also thank all of you for being a part of this. Continuing, Mr. Raghav Chadha is the National Executive Member of the Aam Aadmi Party, a young legislator. Mr. Chadha will give us insights into how he perceives the change in the Indian media scenario, the proliferation of digital media and the prominence gained by digital platforms like YouTube, WhatsApp and other news applications and aggregators. Internet becomes the most used medium of news dissemination, and the regulation of the web faces opposition or for freedom's sake. Mr. Raghav Chadha also exchanging pleasantries, set to join us. I'd like to have you on stage, Mr. Chadha, giving us insights on the evolution and changing nature of news. And for this session, I'd also like to invite Mr. Rishabh Gulati, who will join us on stage with Mr. Raghav Chadha, Mr. Rishabh Gulati, Managing Editor, NewsX, in conversation with Raghav Chadha. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a huge round of applause for our next session.
He's the youngest MP in the Rajya Sabha. Let's give him a bigger round of applause. Regardless of politics, it's a life achievement, and he's going to be around in politics for a very long period of time. Raghav, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a very unique experience because my thanks to the chairman of NBF, the vice chairman and the entire committee, that we are an industry where we have a service to perform. But as an industry, we have many common issues. And it's great to see a lot of stakeholders have come together, including Raghav Chadha. So Raghav Chadha, now you've been a national spokesperson for your party for very many years. How has your relationship and understanding and experience with the media evolved from then to now?
Look, I would define my relationship with the media over the last one decade of my being in public life as kuch khatta, kuch meetha. It's been a mix of both. And the journey started when I was, I think, only all of 22 or 21. When at that point in time, I didn't even get a full beard. And news anchors as well as co-panelists never took me seriously. So from that day to being a member of parliament in the upper house has been quite a journey. And I think I have also seen media over the last one decade evolve and change. Whether it's change for the good or change for the bad, that is of course something that's up for debate and the jury is out on it. But the relationship has, as I said, has been khatta meetha. There have been times when media has been indulgent, media has been impartial, independent, objective, and there have of course been times when media essentially vis-a-vis our case, and I'm speaking from personal experience, performs the duty of not that of a watchdog but that of a bloodhound. And I've seen I think the both extremes, both sides of the spectrum. Yeah.
But Raghav, having watched the evolution of the Aam Aadmi Party, it's literally a revelation that has happened in the past decade. But there was once a energetic activist, Arvind Kejriwal, who was given a lot of exposure by the media. And it's the media who amplified his causes and did make a contribution to who he is today.
Look, there have been times in this country where pressure groups and social movements have got a lot of attention of the media. And that section of media, most certainly, that represented the sentiment of the people. And as a result, of course, since you refer to my leader, Mr. Kejriwal, as an activist in his earlier avatar, of course, during the India Against Corruption days, there was reportage and coverage around the movement and the cause of the movement, and that was primarily because it resonated with the people. It was something that the people also felt that was being echoed, and the cause of the movement met the cause of the people. However, when we became a political party, and let me disabuse you of this notion, we received perhaps the first and the worst media blackout. In our 49-day first government in the year 2013, you would remember, and if we were to rewind back to the December of 2013, you would find that my leader, the Chief Minister of Delhi, at that point in time, had registered an FIR against a leading industrialist of this country. He had shot off a letter to his anti-corruption branch, and a FIR subsequently was registered. As a result, that leading industrialist, who was also a big media baron, ensured that Aam Aadmi Party and the government of Delhi is blacked out from the media. So the 2015 election that we fought was despite the media blackout and in spite of no media coverage. So despite and in spite the media, through sheer grassroots support and political electoral hard work at the ground, we could come back with the highest ever majority that any political party has received.
Well, in a democracy, that's what matters. But it's an evolutionary thing, as I'm sure the party's been evolving. What is your assessment? Is there a neutral media? Is there a right, left, and center of media? But overall, does it give a balanced approach?
Look, to say that there is a section of media that is tilted towards the left, there is a section of media that is tilted towards the right, etc., essentially showcases that rather than putting facts, events and news, opinions are being put forward. And as a result, having opinions is also not a bad thing. Every journalist can have an opinion. Every newsroom can have an opinion. But when that opinion, unfortunately, transforms into indoctrination, that is where the problem begins. And when agenda is driven, when propaganda is unleashed with the intent of indoctrinating people or manufacturing opinion at the mass level, that is where the problem begins, and that is what I feel a section of media is practicing today. However, some are left, some are right, some are centrist, and therefore there is a balance I don't agree with. Today, you have a particular ideology and a particular point of view of the government at the center which enjoys brute majority. And as a result, they wish to impose that ideology and their views on a large section of media, and for them to carry that point to every nook and corner of this country. My only submission here is that media should not become a carrier of the government line. Media should reflect the public sentiment and not toe the government
But
line.
Raghav, doesn't it cut both ways? Because, you are the opposition or at least the challenger in some of the states, but you're also incumbent now, you're government in 2 of these states. So does that not change? Is it just perpetual opposition or complaint against the media with the center? What about your governments? You also are in government now.
No, absolutely. And I mean, we witness both sides. When we are in opposition in states, we witness, as I say, the role of the media, and also in 1.5 or 2 states where we run successful governments. However, the larger point, Rishabh, is that today rather than being a bloodhound for the opposition, it is important to be the watchdog for the government. I mean, we are not in power at the center. People who are not in power are being blamed for, issues like inflation, unemployment, so on and so forth, or transgressions by foreign countries into the Indian territory, rather than the government. So therefore, I think it's high time that a section of media which is practicing a different kind of journalism needs to speak truth to power.
No, there's no doubt that your positioning has evolved and the party is maturing in a different way, but there is opposition, and then there is opposition for opposition's sake. That just because the central government is doing it, we need to be critical of it. Is there a role in the media that if something good is happening, that as part of Team India, it should be able to applaud the good as well as
No,
negate the
absolutely.
bad?
If anything that is good that has happened, certainly the opposition and also the national media and all platforms of media must be constructive and appreciative of that. There is absolutely no doubt. And opposition for the sake of opposition is something that I personally and my party personally doesn't believe in. For example, I'll give you a recent example of recent past. When the Prime Minister launched the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, the first Chief Minister in the country, or the first political party to wholeheartedly support as well as participate in that Abhiyan, was my leader, Mr. Kejriwal, and my party, the Aam Aadmi Party. So therefore, if there is a constructive policy, something good is happening, it's incumbent upon us, on the opposition and on the media, to participate in that and to take the word forward. However, it is also important for a large section of media today to introspect. And I feel, as somebody who's been in opposition for a fairly long amount of time, who's been at the forefront of national media also in that sense when I have to represent my party, that a section of media is only looking for gaps and pitfalls for the opposition and not for the government, which was not the case previously. It is not, you certainly should correct the opposition, but those in power, those who control the levers of power, are more accountable and answerable.
No, the introspection is open to media for sure, for political parties. Your logics and strategies evolve, and I'm hoping evolution takes place on all fronts. But let's just change the tack, because media bashing has become a very common forte. It was perhaps during the first few days of the COVID lockdown that, as a country we realized that you can't wait on Twitter, you can't wait on a YouTube explaining video 1 week later, you have to watch live news. And there was a purpose and a role that was being served. So with the advent of the new generation of media, this concept of live TV and its importance, have we reinvigorated it a bit?
TV media is here to stay. TV media is certainly one form of media that has a potential to influence the minds of a significant part of our population, and the penetration of TV media is only increasing in this country. During COVID, of course, TV media played a very constructive role in the sense that they were able to drive home the awareness points vis-a-vis a pandemic or a raging pandemic. And that was certainly one of the biggest utilities of national media, and I certainly applaud all sections of media for that matter for their constructive role during COVID.
Okay, so now, Raghav, all parties, perhaps better than the media industry itself, yours and others, you have extensive social media teams and a social media outreach. Yet some of the worst excesses, both named and unnamed, happen on social media. Yet it's TV media that's generally bashed, but social media, criticism doesn't often come from politics.
Look, social media is a completely unregulated form of media. It's a place where everyone is free to express one's opinion. As long as people are using parliamentary language and are not crossing the line of decency, I think every opinion should be welcome. And I would say that while all of us are in public life, even editors, leading journalists like yourself are also in public life. And therefore, just the way we are open to criticism, journalists must also be open to some form of criticism.
Yeah, but I think it's something that we're all trying to understand. Raghav, let me take on the other tack, because I've seen in my career the evolution change in political parties. There was a time when you spoke to political leaders personally and invited them into debates. In TV channels, it's become centralized, and even in political parties, I think all, bar none almost, have become centralized. oftentimes it is junior spokespersons. Very rarely do we get to interact with members of parliament representing their parties on TV debates. I know the number of channels is increased. And in the centralized places, sometimes the party is not represented, the party is boycotting certain channels. How do we then have an effective debate if the parties themselves don't provide people who can make and argue their point well?
Look, first of all, I think parties that have a centralized mechanism of assigning spokespersons and panelists for several panel discussions and debates is a very good form of management. I think, and it is purely done by parties, particularly by my party, for optimum utilization of manpower of spokespersons, so that everyone, every channel or every platform where we are invited, we are adequately represented by an able spokesperson, number one. Number two, with those who become senior and those who get promoted, there are new entrants in every organization that must be given an opportunity to perform. And just how you have new anchors and new TV personalities coming up in your news channels every now and then, there are political parties where people join and they perform, and some outperform, and then they progress. As far as access of journalists to politicians is concerned, while senior members and MPs, so on and so forth, may have limited, some of them may have limited their media interactions. But that doesn't mean that the access of journalists to politicians or members of the government has reduced. I think that access is pretty much intact. It has perhaps only increased over the last few years.
No, but it's up to us to increase the quality of our debate, and it's also up to political parties to empower us to increase the quality of debate. And obviously, some people can argue the point better, but I know my time here is short, Raghav. In essence, what is the job that you perceive of media? Are we supposed to just be critical of government, primarily central government, or is there a constructive nation-building role also to be played here?
Without referring to being critical of central government or being favorable to opposition, let me say this, that it is incumbent upon media today to put forward news and not noise, to put forward sense and not sensationalism, to put forward journalism, not jingoism. And unfortunately, a large section, and I'm saying this without hesitation, that a section of media today, unfortunately, has, from being a journalist, has today become a propagandist of the government. There's no point in becoming a cheerleader of the government, because once you do that, while you may enjoy certain brownie points with the powers that be, you are deteriorating your own credibility. And as a result, just how people, Rishabh, in this country used to say, and perhaps say this even today, and that led to the formation of a new political startup, a clean, upright startup like my party. That perception was कि नेता चोर हैं, सब नेता चोर हैं. Now that perception is slowly moving towards media बिका हुआ है, media बिका हुआ है, media बिका हुआ है. And you hear this very often when you interact with the people at the grassroots level, कि जी media बिका हुआ है. So therefore, I think it is extremely important on your part, on the part of NBF and several media agencies and outlets, to course correct and to ensure that this idea or this notion that people today have
no
is
doubt
undone.
introspection is good, but it's the political parties only who say, no, media bika hua hai, and convince their followers. But I know we are out of time. There are sessions planned. I know you have a flight to catch. Raghav Chadha, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a big round of applause. Thank you very much for taking a few straight
questions.
questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishabh. Thank you, Raghav. Rishabh and Raghav, thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, just want to give a loud shout out to the official broadcast and technology partner for this event. They are LiveView and Lamhas. LiveView is the #1 choice for the live news and dynamic sports coverage by almost all broadcasters worldwide. A little bit about the News Broadcasters Federation. Hardeep Singh Puri, before that, ladies and gentlemen, Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri just entering the venue, should be inside in a few minutes from now. Please stay seated. I request all our panelists to be seated. Kindly be seated before our next guest. The News Broadcasters Federation, ladies and gentlemen, is India's largest news federation with over 55 members. It's the only news body with maximum representation from regional broadcasters across the length and breadth of India. Now, the NBF and all its members are united in their commitment to ensuring that news media must truly serve as a strong pillar of our vibrant democracy. Now, the NBF, in sheer membership numbers and beyond them, has ensured unparalleled representation from news broadcasters across languages and regions of India. Now, NBF is also the first body of broadcasters in India that truly represents the vision and concerns of regional, vernacular and national media that constitute the changing face of media in India. Now, the aim of the body, that is NBF, is to ensure that the united voice of broadcasters across regions, languages are heard and solutions are sought in a way that further strengthens news broadcast in India. And as we wait for our next panelists to come up on stage, I request all our guests to be kindly seated. A lot of movement at the back, especially. Can I request everyone to be seated, please? Can we please ensure that the hall is settled before we have our next panelist on stage? A quick reminder, ladies and gentlemen, after this session we will be breaking for lunch. After this session, after Future of News Building India Battling Fake News, that's in just a minute from now, Hardeep Singh Puri, the Union Minister, will be up on stage. It's a session moderated by Mr. Arnab Goswami. And after that we will be breaking for lunch. And a reminder that after the lunch we have Himanta Biswa Sarma, the Assam Chief Minister, joining us on the stage today. And we have a series of discussions lined up for the second half, compelling conversations on the future of news in India. So I request all our panelists to kindly be seated, especially those near the door. If I can request some of our guests to kindly enter the hall and settle down, please. We need the hall to be settled so that our next panelists can come up on stage. Can I request our guest coordinators also to ensure that everyone is please seated? Please take your seats so that we can get the next session started. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, while we wait for our next panelist, I'm requesting all our panelists to please take a seat. All our guests in the auditorium to please be seated. And can we please close the door so that there is no movement there, please? Let's close the door. And everyone, especially at the back, and I request some of you to please be seated. And please do keep quiet, maintain silence while panels are on so that there is no disturbance on stage. We're just waiting for our next panelist to come up on stage. And a few audio visuals of our partner networks up on screen now as we wait for Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri to join us.
Change is brewing in India. India is building up like never before. Buoyed by an unprecedented need for it during the pandemic, the news media in India is observing a healthy churn like never before. The discerning news consumer is happy to embrace emerging options.